All right. Well, I do like to start on time. Everybody's got busy days, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Thank you for joining our session on best practices investments. My name is Tracy Bills. I'm Vice President with SCS Engineers, and I'm also the Executive Director of the California Resource Recovery Association, and I am your moderator today. We have some great presentations. First off, we're going to have Neil Seldman. He's going to talk about the big picture on glass recycling and markets. Natalie Betts will speak to the building blocks to good contracts at MRFs, including challenges that can come up and how to make it successful. And then Ben Pedigo will talk about preparing glass for end markets and what the end markets are doing. So questions will be at the end after all three speakers have finished. If you have a question, please place it in the chat. And then I'll go ahead and ask the questions to the speakers at the end. If you did want to ask a question rather than using the chat, please raise your hand and unmute yourself when you're called on. But don't raise your hand until after we finish and we begin the Q&A section. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I did want to note that the order was a little changed around than what was in the program. And once you have received or seen all the presentations, you will understand why. It's a methodical approach. So let's go ahead and get started. Neil Selman, he is our first speaker. He's the Director of Recycling Cornucopia Project for Zero Waste USA. Neil brings a wealth of experience in the waste world. He has been a zero waste and anti-incineration campaigner for 4 decades. He co-founded the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, National Recycling Coalition, Zero Waste USA, Save the Albatross Coalition. Currently, he directs the Recycling Cornucopia Project for Zero Waste USA. He also directed the Waste to Wealth initiative of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance for 48 years and participated in the research for the Zero Waste Plan for Hawaii Island in 2021 for Recycle Hawaii. Wow, Neil, that's a lot. So Neil does not have a presentation. Neil, I'm going to go ahead and take my video off, so it's all about you, but I'll pop back on when we're just about done with your presentation, okay? Take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is a great privilege to, first of all, be a part of the conference, but also to kick off this particular discussion about investing in recycling. I think it's a very good idea. I am very optimistic about recycling. After my presentation, hopefully will convince you that it's a great sector to invest in. And that's because your dollars of investment not only deal with the waste materials, the discarded materials that we need to get rid of in a manner that's gentle on nature, but there are economic, social, and very dramatic environmental impact savings when we do reuse, recycle, and compost. As we all know, the U.S. recycling rate has stagnated for a long time. But within, we're at between 32 and 35%. We've been there a while. But within that statistic, there are some gems. And let me just gloss over a couple of them. Oakland, California has created over 1,000 jobs as a result of its investment in, I'll refer to these zero waste as a general meaning for recycling, reuse, and composting. Austin, Texas has made similar investments, and they've expanded their economy by over $1 billion in the last 10 years. There's traditional recycling, which we know about, but there's also incredible investment in reuse and in composting. The reuse sector has grown by leaps and bounds due to COVID, because they were essential businesses, and the expansions were incredible. Urban Ore, I'm just naming a few: Community Forklift, Second Chance in Baltimore. Community Forklift is just outside of DC. The Rebuild Center in Portland, Construction Junction in Pittsburgh, and of course the perhaps 20 or 30 Habitat for Humanity restores. These stores proved themselves essential for people who were doing home projects, and these companies pay sales tax. Happen to know that Urban Ore is paying about $350,000 a year in sales tax this year. The other thing I'm very optimistic about is glass recycling. Two of the next speakers we'll be talking about their glass programs. Glass is an invaluable material, and more attention is being paid to it. So I see growth there. The biggest growth in terms of volume of discards, I think, will be in composting. That's because every community that measures their materials, organic material, yard debris, soil papers, and food discards form the single largest portion of their waste stream. Composting is easy, it's local, there's no economy of scale, and there are constant markets year-round, good markets year-round by gardeners, landscapers. Cities have a tremendous need for composting. And another ideal project is Camp Small in Baltimore, where they now compost the street waste, and they've elevated their program to when they get trees that have fallen down, they now have invested in the equipment to plank those trees and provide good lumber to the wood industry in their area. As far as sources of capital for investment, this is perhaps the best time ever, certainly since my beginning in this field in the mid-1970s. The federal programs are very flush with money. I work with Gary Liss and Bob Geddert, who are both experts. Bob is with the NRC. Gary Liss is with my group, Zero Waste USA, although he works with the Sierra Club and NRC. And here, the investment is from the federal government going to the states and the cities. And we're urging community groups and interest groups to be organized and ask for money for infrastructure that they need for their particular sector, because the infrastructure money is there. In addition to that, there's local financing. And here again, this is not my field, but I am working with a company called Community Visions. Steve Schaff, he's aligned with Michael Schuman, an expert on community funding. We're being educated and on green banks, on GoFundMe investment at the local level. It is really quite an enormous flow of capital that's coming from the local sector going into the local sector. I think the following things can help both communities move forward with these projects. I think the strategies and tactics are available. Pay as you throw is a known way unit pricing for garbage collection is very important. Cities are getting tremendous improvement, making their systems more efficient. Distributed composting, I mentioned, backyard community, and of course, citywide systems, countywide systems. They were all being built. There's a wonderful story on the Mid-Atlantic area where I am in Washington, D.C. About 8 years ago, a major private compost company failed in Wilmington, Delaware. And the result is that citizens in every county and every city in the Mid-Atlantic have petitioned for composting to be implemented, and it is being implemented. The other factors that I see that can help local build the markets, I think there should be a national surcharge on disposal at landfills and incinerators. I think you have to tax hybrid packaging. I mentioned pay as you throw. Certain things have to be banned. Toxic products, I think toxic components of plastic have to be banned. I think there are bans on organics from landfills are critical, given the impact that landfills have on climate change. If we keep the organics out, those impacts of landfills are greatly mitigated. Finally, I want to talk about the economic social impacts of some of these programs. I have to mention the reuse corridor in the Central Appalachian region, Southern Ohio, Western West Virginia, and Northern Kentucky, if my mental map is correct. This is a group of anchor institutions, businesses, government agencies, both at the federal, state, and local level, who are pooling their resources in incredibly imaginable ways, reskilling their part of the country where their jobs, good jobs have been scarce and environmental pressures have been very intense. They are literally mining the waste stream. Let's call it the discard stream, because these folks are proving that it's not waste because they're turning it into mattress repairs, electronics repair, composting, etc. And finally, I want to say that you cannot underestimate the social impact of a good job. In fact, in the communities I work with on reuse, we are seeing reductions and elimination of recidivism. That is, people who have been in the prison jail system, coming out of those systems, returning citizens. These jobs that train people to deconstruct machines, to deconstruct houses, to deconstruct computers, etc., recover usable parts, repair what you can. They are reducing recidivism. Recidivism at the national level is somewhere in 50–75%. These companies are getting down to 15% and 16% recidivism. One deconstruction group in Baltimore, Humanum organization, had 3 years of no recidivism. If you want to rebuild your cities, ending or eliminating or reducing recidivism is one essential task, and it's the same task. It's the same important task as recycling and moving our discards into useful industries and agriculture, and limiting the human impact on nature. And that's it for me, and I'm looking forward to some really good technical on-the-ground presentations, and thank you for your time.
Excellent, Neil. I love what you said. Don't underestimate the social impact of a good job. Love it. Thank you. Yep, we'll see what the questions come up at the end. So next is Natalie Bates. She is the Director of Partnerships and Municipal Relationships with Balcones Resources. She is responsible for developing partnerships to advance a circular economy and works with cities to support their recycling programs. Before joining Balcones, Natalie spent 10 years in public service with the City of Austin, most recently as the city's Circular Economy Program Manager with the Economic Development Department and Austin Resource Recovery. So Natalie, go ahead and get your PowerPoint up there and you can take it away.
Great, thank you, Tracy, and thanks for that great presentation, Neil. Really giving us a grounding in where we are nationally. That's fantastic. I'm going to share my screen right now. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to share with you today a little bit about MRF contracts, so contracts between municipalities and MRF operators, and how those contracts can be set up for success. And as Tracy mentioned, I kind of come to this talk with experience both in the public sector with the municipality. I was with the City of Austin for 10 years, with 6 of those in the city's Resource Recovery Department, and now I'm with Balcones Resources. So I've kind of seen this process from both angles. A little bit about who Balcones is. We are an independent recycler based in Austin, Texas. We have 5 facilities currently across Texas, Arkansas, and Florida, and we are growing. We are adding a new facility in San Antonio by 2024, and we will begin operating the City of Phoenix's MRFs in 2023. Something that's different about us is all we do is recycle, so we don't own a landfill, we're not affiliated with one, and we don't do any municipal trash hauling. So what we focus on day in and day out is doing this piece of it where we sort recyclables. And we focus on these kind of key differentiators for us. One is our advanced facilities, making sure we invest in great technology to sort material as best we can, making sure we staff that equipment with trained people who are experts, and we retain that talent in our company. And then what today's talk is really focused on, which is our partnership. So we really recognize how much we are part of a full ecosystem within the recycling system. We depend on municipalities to bring us material. We depend on successful end markets. And so we try to be the very best partner we can to all of those different players in the value chain. And in terms of what that means for us practically with municipal contracts, it means we really keep our word. So we have never added a fee to one of our municipal contracts. We've never requested a price increase outside of the contract. We've never ended a contract early, and we've never dropped a program material. So we keep our word. We do what we say we're going to do over the long term of these contracts. And so what I'm hoping to share with you today is how that can be possible for all municipal MRF contracts, because this is such a critical relationship to the success of recycling. This is what we see as the kind of main roles that each entity is playing. So from the MRF vendor side, to be a good partner, we need to design a great system that's going to capture material, develop and retain expert staff. We really need to listen to city priorities, like what is it that is most important for your program, and then continue to reinvest in our system. So not just build a good MRF for the years 1 and 2 of the program, but make sure that that is performing really highly and well all throughout the life of the system. On the municipal side, we look for programs that are committed to their recycling program and are willing to fund high quality recycling. We really love to see, as Neil mentioned, pay as you throw and treating your unit payment for recycling. I think that's really critical. All our other utilities are funded that way. You only pay for the energy that you use, and no one would consider like cutting off municipal water service, for example. And so that's what we would like to see from municipalities, is treating recycling as that utility and as that essential service. And then taking the long view and then playing their important role on minimizing contamination inbound. And for both of us, it's transparency, communication, and co-investment that's going to make this relationship successful. So kind of brass tacks of what is in the contract we'd like to see. I'm going to go over these 5 things. First is the pricing model, how a city can evaluate pricing trade-offs, what goes into that pricing, and then communication and how to plan for change. So first of all, on the pricing model, if I imagine that a lot of you who are here today are already using this system or are aware of this pricing system for your recycling contract, which is your processing fee and your revenue share. But just to kind of reiterate the purpose of these 2 components of the price, the purpose of the processing fee is to cover operating costs so that your operator can continue operating even when recycling markets are down. And then the revenue share is there to share in the value of the commodities. So we recognize that the municipality is bringing us material that has value, and also they influence how much value it has by what they can do to limit contamination in the stream. And it can also even generate net revenue when markets are good. That can't always happen, but sometimes markets are strong enough that the revenue share actually exceeds the cost of the processing fee. The reason we use this system, and is not typically how a municipal contract would work, is this kind of complex pricing model, but it's used because economics in recycling don't work the way we learned in Econ 101. Supply does not change for our business even when demand changes. So as a MRF, we're really a manufacturer. We're making this product that you see in the picture. We're making baled commodities, baled recovered commodities. If we made coffee mugs or something, like if people didn't want our coffee mugs as much anymore, we would make less of them and we would order less ceramic and we would respond, right? And we do not have that luxury as a MRF manufacturer. We are receiving the same volume of inbound material, whether there's high demand for our outbound product or not. So that leads to a pretty volatile price on recycling, but and this system helps to kind of mitigate against those fluctuations and make these programs work even in the face of that. So this is just a chart to show that volatility in the markets. This is one example community looking in the past 7 years between 2014 and 2021. And you can see that the price of what is that ton of recycling is worth is going to vary. But I also want to emphasize on this slide that it is unpredictable how these markets are going to go, but we know that. So it's predictably unpredictable. We know they're going to go up if they're down, and we know they're going to go down if they're up. And it does sort of normalize over time to a pretty consistent average. So you may not know like 6 months from now what the price of or value of a ton of recycling is going to be, but over a long term of one of these contracts, you really can get a good guess on how much value you're going to get from your recyclables, because we have all this data and because it does fluctuate, but we know it's going to, so we can plan around that. So what's really critical for municipalities entering into contracts is to use that historical data to evaluate prices that you get in. So let's say you've gone out to bid for a contract for a MRF, prices come back to you with different processing fee and revenue share combos. How do you evaluate those? You have to use your historical market data to evaluate how that contract is going to perform for you in up markets, down markets, and most importantly, in the average market, because that's what's really going to impact you over the long term. And this, if you don't have data from your past performance as a recycling program, there are indexes that you can buy licenses for to get that data. So I want to give you an example of how this could work and look. Let's say you get 2 bids in from your solicitation. Your first MRF operator is offering you a $98 a ton processing fee at an 80% revenue share. Vendor B is $78 a ton, 40% revenue share. Which one is better? Which one would you choose on price alone? I think on first glance, the $78 a ton is a lot cheaper on the processing fee, so that might look better. But what is this revenue share piece worth? That's kind of the question mark. And if you use historical market data, you can get to that answer, and you can really better compare apples to apples. So we did this for kind of an example community. It would change based on your region and all of that. But in this case, in an average market, vendor A would cost the city $36 a ton, and vendor B would cost the municipality $47 a ton. So despite the fact that that processing fee is lower, the lower revenue share means that they're not ultimately at the end of the day going to get as much value from their recycling program. So you can do that with the solicitation responses that you get so that you have something easy to compare with. And I think it's really important for communicating with elected officials in particular who really don't know what this revenue share percentage means for the program or how to value recycling revenues. So having this broken down into just an average cost, I think is really helpful. And then I also want to talk about just how these general approaches compare and what the pros and cons are. So you kind of have roughly 2 models here. You've got kind of doing a higher processing fee, but offering the city a higher revenue share, or lower fee, lower share. So the advantage of that second model is obviously less sticker shock. Having that lower processing fee is compelling. On the flip side, there's a higher potential revenue, and sometimes even high enough that you're making money on your recycling program. So if that's important for your community to say, that's an advantage there. With your lower fee, lower share model, you are going to have less variation in cost because a smaller piece of your overall price is made up in that revenue share that fluctuates. So good years are going to be less good, but bad years are going to be less bad. So it's going to be a little bit more steady. The high fee, high share, we mentioned at the beginning that the purpose of the processing fee is to cover the cost of operations. So if you have a higher fee, you can cover the cost of higher quality operations, which is a big pro, and your vendor can then count on that consistent income to make investments in technology and to pay higher wages for staff. The other advantage of this one is that with the higher revenue share, there's more co-investment in the quality of the recycling, because if the municipality who controls the inbound stream can lower the contamination rate, that's going to increase their revenue share. So it's good when everyone has the financial stake in lowering the contamination that's in the recycling program. I do want to kind of highlight something about the last slide that I mentioned with this little cartoon. So I mentioned here that there's less variation in cost with that low fee, low share model. And I said, the good years are going to be less good and the bad years are going to be less bad. Now, we all kind of bring to economic decisions something called loss aversion bias that behavioral economists have identified, which is you would think that winning $10 should feel like as good as losing $10 feels bad, but it doesn't. Like emotionally, we really hate to lose $10, and winning $10 is nice, but it doesn't have that same power. And I want to mention this here because the low share, low fee model kind of uses has that advantage of having a lower floor. Like bad years are going to be less bad, and that can be very powerful, especially in a risk-averse environment like government, where you want to avoid bad years in particular. Not that everyone doesn't, but I think government in particular does want to avoid risk. You don't want to let that, though, blind you to an opportunity where if you have a higher fee, higher revenue share model that on average is going to perform better, you are ultimately going to bring more into the city budget. And so that's just something to be aware of, is that that lower processing fee model isn't always going to be the better financially long-term, and this loss aversion bias also might play into the decision making. So kind of being aware of that and recognizing that $10 is still $10. All right, so major cost drivers. First of all is volume. I think this is our industry's location. So volume is really critical to price. And to some degree, you as a city might not have a lot of control over that. You have a small population, you're going to have smaller volume. But what you can do is work with other communities nearby to pool that together, or to make commercial volume available through doing something like a recycling ordinance for commercial properties having to recycle. Because the more recycling volume available in your market, the better economies of scale and the better price you're going to see. Composition of the recycling stream is so critical. Lowering that percentage that's contamination and that's trash is going to help offer better pricing. And then municipal investment can be key as well. If there's land available for a MRF, or the city has the ability to pay for the cost of utilities, that can help support the program as well. Communication is, of course, really key. I mentioned a couple of times that these are long-term contracts. These are long relationships. And so making sure that there's a really strong foundation of communication is important. And that can start even before the RFP is out on the street by seeking market feedback. We love it when cities ask for vendor opinion, do stakeholder workshops, do market sounding events, so that we can give feedback that ultimately will make the RFP more attractive to vendors, get more competition, and be better for everyone. We really recommend having references as part of your evaluation process, and ask other communities where this operator works, how do they communicate? Because that's going to be really critical. And then we like to see regular meetings as part of the contract. So keeping those communication channels open is so critical. And sometimes if staff changes or something, like you can start out a contract meeting a lot and then that might fall off. If you require it in the contract, it's going to make sure that it happens, and that is going to help make the program more successful. And then the last piece is expecting change. So we know technology is going to change. We know end markets are going to shift over these long-term contracts. We don't know exactly how, but you can plan ahead for that kind of thing. So, and also, how do you incentivize your processor to continue reinvesting in the facility, to take advantage of new technology as it comes out? What is the process that you're going to identify collaboratively for adding and removing materials from the stream if those end markets do shift significantly? And then just making contingency plans in the case of emergency, natural disaster, major retrofits. Talk to your vendors about that, your selected vendors, or in the feedback process, like how can we come up with a plan in advance together so that we can weather any storms that come well. So in summary, a little quote from possibly Mark Twain, so not confirmed by the internet, but that history does not often repeat itself, but it does rhyme. So, we don't know exactly what's going to happen to recycling markets a year from today. We don't know exactly what technology is going to be available in 3 years, 5 years time, but we do know that there is going to be change. And so we can together kind of plan for that change, use our past experience in the last decade or so of single stream recycling to build systems and build relationships that are going to weather through that change better together. So thank you so much for your time and attention. This is my contact information, and look forward to the questions at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalie. Interesting. I like what you say about recycling markets are predictably unpredictable. Isn't that the truth? I don't think we ever think of it in those words, but I thought that was pretty profound. Excellent. Well, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to our last speaker. Ben Pedigo. He is the Corporate Recycling Operations Coordinator for Rumpke Waste and Recycling. Ben has been with Midwest-based Rumpke for 29 years, working with municipalities, businesses, and industry to divert recyclable materials from the landfill. Ben is a graduate of Vanderbilt University and has served as president of the Association of Ohio Recyclers. He worked with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission to develop the Ohio River Sweep, an annual event that brings out volunteers to collect trash along the Ohio River and its tributaries. So Ben, I think Chris is going to show your presentation for you. There it is. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Tracy, Chris, Bonnie. Thank you. So I'm honored to present with Natalie and Neil. And I wanted to talk about an operation that Rumpke actually 20 years ago started. And Chris, go ahead here to the next slide. I want to tell you a little bit about Rumpke and the background on the group. It's a Ohio-based company. And Chris, you can, thank you for your patience with me. You can go to the next slide if possible. The Rumpke operation was founded in 1932 in Cincinnati. Kind of a rags to riches story, a family fighting the Great Depression, trying to figure out a way to make a living to support their family, not only their family, but their nieces and nephews, collected garbage to feed livestock, and kind of transitioned to really focusing in the 50s on waste removal and landfills, and now looking at today, one of the largest privately owned recycling and waste facilities in the United States. Natalie, just wanted to point out we're the only waste hauler and landfill operator in the United States that has a processing facility to prepare glass, post-consumer glass, for sale in the markets to bottle manufacturers and fiberglass manufacturers. That's our headquarters there in Cincinnati, Ohio. Chris, good to go here. Thank you. Want to talk a little bit about glass recycling. Neil, you had mentioned the importance of glass, and Neil, I always appreciate your perspective on your articles. I always enjoy reading your articles. And Natalie, what good information about contracts, and would just add, municipalities to continue to recycle glass. There are a lot of good things going on with glass recycling, and I really think that it's a good opportunity for us to really embrace glass recycling. It's a wonderful story. It's kind of a legacy material, can be used over and over again. I kind of get a kick out of this this photograph, Michael Owens, and just want to recognize Owens, Illinois, for the important work that they do. Ohio, started in Ohio. Michael Owens here with a glass bottle manufacturing equipment in the early 20th century. It's really a neat story. Chris, good to go on the next slide. Well, what we saw in the late 1990s, and Natalie kind of talked about the birth and the balconies, the operation, how things have expanded, and Rumpke as well. We went from a dual stream system to a single stream system in the 90s, and we found in 2001, 2002, that it was essential for us to become vertically integrated in managing that material. It was not an option for Rumpke to drop glass. And so this business, this particular component of the Rumpke recycling operation, this began in 2002. We were always in discussion with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, now the Ohio EPA, about the ability to use post-consumer to use post-consumer glass for end markets in Ohio and in Indiana as well. And want to point out too that the Indiana Department of Environmental Management is very focused on the end markets in Indiana, and pleasure to work with both ODNR, the Ohio EPA, and IDEM. The Ohio EPA identified Johns Manville in Defiance, Ohio in 2003 as a potential market for using post-consumer glass in Ohio. Go on to the next slide there, Chris. So initial, and this was kind of an incremental investment. Right now, Rumpke is processing approximately 5,000 tons a month of post-consumer 3-mix glass, as well as glass coming in from solid waste districts and third-party people that are bringing material in. It started out, kind of a slow investment. We were looking at the ability to clean glass and to grind it. So again, with the help from the Department of Natural Resources, we were able to start moving this material to Johns Manville. And this is a shot of some equipment that was initially purchased through some funding through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Chris, good to go here. This is kind of a phase 2. As we got more involved in this, we realized that it was important for us to be able to process a bottle grade glass. And so again, with the help of the Department of Natural Resources, they brought Owens, Illinois into the picture, and through some upgrades at our recycling facility in Dayton, Ohio, the facility was upgraded to be able to manage to divert, clean, divert, and optically sort the post-consumer glass. Really a neat story. What we are processing at the Dayton glass plant, it's delivered to Owens, Illinois plants in Ohio, LaPel, Indiana, going to fiberglass manufacturing plants in Richmond, Indiana, and Defiance, Ohio. So it's truly a circular economy story. It's a great story. We're very fortunate in this corridor, this Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky corridor, to have some very viable markets for virtually all recyclable materials. Chris, next slide. This is a shot of the Clarity optics that are at the recycling facility. Initially, Rumpke received equipment from a kind of a processor. It was almost a kind of a pilot project to grind glass. And then as things evolved, starting in 2002, and then this phase 2, 2011, then more of an infrastructure improvement with this facility. The investment of the Bender and Company out of Austria, kind of, we were able to process more effectively glass coming in. Again, the Ohio EPA was very, very supportive on providing funding for this project. Chris, next slide. This is a shot of our flint being diverted through the optics. We started to look at how, and with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and the EPA, we started to look at what could be done at this particular point in time. And I believe this maybe 2015, 2016, what could be done to retrofit existing MRFs with equipment, glass cleaning equipment to help in the cleanup process. So, MRFs will generate a glass product that single stream MRFs that will need to be cleaned prior to shipment to an end market. So we were working with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, with MachineX, our equipment vendor, to come up with some innovative ideas to be able to retrofit some equipment onto an existing MRF. And interestingly enough, I recently was talking to Scott DeFife with the Glass Packaging Institute about some work that they are doing, Glass Packaging Institute, Glass Recycling Foundation, to help MRFs to be able to get some good cleaning equipment. And I did, Tracy, I did include the MachineX website in terms of being able to contact a group. We really enjoy working with MachineX, but you know, I think that the ability to have a MRF that has that glass cleaning system. Natalie mentioned the success that Balcones has had on MRF certification, which is that's very important. And you know, as a municipality, you know, I being part of a city, I want to know that my glass is being recycled. It's very important. Something that obviously needs to be included in any kind of a municipal contract. Chris, next slide here. I talked a little bit about Glass Packaging Institute. Scott DeFife, who is you know, managing that component, doing some real neat things. Rumpke is a member of the Glass Recycling Coalition. Just wanted to you know, mention Will Sager, Amy Ong, Rich Hope, Laura Henneman with Strategic Materials, Sarah Nichols, Scott Mao. You know, we're bringing people together, and we wanted to mention Deanna Gardner with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, you know, the good work that they do. Laurie Stevenson with the Ohio EPA, Chet Cheney. Those folks, you know, I think Tracy, that this can be replicated. And again, you know, we didn't start out, which it's kind of turned out to be a $12 million investment, but it did not start out as a $12 million investment. And so incremental steps, I think can be replicated. Chris, I think the last slide maybe is just, you know, how to get in touch with me. I am just, Tracy, honored to be part of this group. And I hope that this discussion will compel you know, municipalities and recyclers to really embrace glass recycling if you know, if they've not already. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben. So if anyone has questions, place in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask those questions. But to prime the pump here, Ben, I have one question. You said that your process and all of the lessons learned you had with your glass recycling system, you said it could be replicated. And I'm just kind of curious what, if there's any kind of top lessons learned that would be good to share for people who would love to start glass recycling, because as you know, majority of the country doesn't seem to have good glass recycling programs. So anything that you could share?
Well, you know, I think Neil, in our discussion prior to our presentation, talked about, you know, there are end markets in place. Tracy, I think, you know, I would identify an end market, and I would look at, you know, and I'm kind of coming at it, Tracy, as a MRF operator, you know, that kind of mindset. But do I have, as a MRF operator, do I have the right components to effectively divert glass and clean glass? I think there are a lot of new technologies that are out there that, you know, I think when we ran into issues about recycling 2018, 2019, when materials were, you know, had been going overseas, it's kind of hard for Rumpke to relate to that because, you know, virtually everything that we recycle is within a 300-mile radius of, you know, Dayton, Ohio. But I think this needs to be revisited. And so MRF operators, you know, there's money out there to help them with, you know, upgrading their MRF.
Thank you. That's excellent. So I put the links that Ben had mentioned to in the chat, and then Natalie just put a couple links in there for resources as well. Bob Goddard says we are honored to have Natalie, Neal, and Ben presenting today. Thank you, Bob. Absolutely. Let's see. It says here from Trevor Flynn, Natalie, should municipalities anticipate fire mitigation liability to be incorporated into MRF agreements moving forward? Ooh, good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. For those of you who might not be aware, fires at MRFs have been increasing in frequency across the country, and a big culprit of that is just the increasing volume of lithium-ion batteries in household products, and then therefore things that end up in the MRF. We don't accept batteries, of course, but lots of things that we don't accept end up at our facilities, and those are highly combustible, and so they're causing more and more fires at facilities. I have not necessarily seen specific contract terms around fire mitigation yet, but I do think it's a good idea to ask your potential vendors about their fire mitigation strategies, because it can really impact the facility. Of course, can cause significant downtime. It's obviously a safety concern for employees. So I do think it's a good idea for municipalities to ask your vendors about what strategies they have in place to mitigate fire.
Excellent. Thank you. This question is also on glass from Sheila. Companies like Anheuser-Busch have directives to produce product with 50% post-consumer glass in their goods, but are missing those targets because they can't get their hands on the material. Even Ohio has only one glass processing facility, which is yours, Ben, in Dayton. How can we collect more from the public and help businesses meet their goals when there appears to be infrastructure and processing challenges state by state? I don't know what the answer is, but wondered what the panel thought. Good question. Anybody want to take the first stab? Neal. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
I was going to say I'll pass it on to Natalie and Ben in a second, but I do know in our area in Washington, D.C., across the river in Northern Virginia, they have a facility that crushes, it's a public facility, but serves several jurisdictions that basically crushes glass, and it's used in the construction industry, laying pipes, foundations. I don't know what the market price is, but there's a very robust market for that material. The other thing is that my city, Washington, D.C., right now pays a $25 surcharge for processing glass. So that's an incentive that adds, if your recycling is glass is worth $25 a ton, in Washington, D.C., it's worth $50 a ton because you avoid the $25 surcharge. So that's why I say I'm optimistic about glass markets, even in remote areas. And when I say remote areas, I think Ben and Natalie will correct me, but I think you could move glass 250, 300 miles and still make it economical for the industry. I wait to be corrected because I'm not.
I agree with you, Neal, and I think to your point, the landfill avoidance, that has to be taken in consideration. Glass recycling, and I remember the days, Neal, I worked at Adams Brown Recycling, still in business, non-for-profit. We would truck glass from Georgetown, rural Ohio to Huntington, West Virginia. It's never been a super money maker, but it's a landfill avoidance, and it is infinitely recyclable. I mean, it's a great story.
Yeah. Ben, if I could take 30 seconds, when I saw your slides, I remember in the 70s crushing glass in a barrel with a big iron bar crushing it. I think you've come a long way.
Natalie, did you have anything to add to that question?
I mean, I think Ben and Neal both said it correctly. I think the challenge is, like with so much recycling, it's like access to the infrastructure in places that are not major metropolitan areas. I think that's the big challenge, is how to move material from those end markets, or from where it's generated to the end market, because as Ben mentioned, it's infinitely recyclable. There's great end markets for glass. It's just a lot of the value of it is lost in the transport. So that piece is the puzzle to solve, whether it's like, grant funding or corporate funding to solve that piece, or doing things like, I know there's a city in Texas that has their own glass crushing machine, so that they can do more local applications like Neil mentioned. So that's a component. And then the other piece to look at is, if you are a smaller community, doing it as a drop off or as a source separated. We're a big fan of glass and single stream. In a community like ours, it works, and you get more volume ultimately by doing that. But for some smaller communities, you can keep the value of the material up if you do source separated. So it just depends on your circumstance, but I would say it's that transportation cost that is the puzzle piece to solve for.
Hey, Neil, I had a question for you. You had mentioned the biggest value is in compost. And I think most people can definitely agree. And I know there's probably a whole hierarchy, and it's going to be it depends on your community. But I'm just curious, in California, organics is a huge thing right now, and permitting and other challenges have come up. And I'm just kind of curious if there are a few best practices for those out there that are wanting to start a program. Is it political will? Like, what is that one or two nuggets that they really need to think about?
Well, it clearly is political will, as I mentioned before, in the central Atlantic, mid-Atlantic area. It's been citizen pressure to get community jurisdictions, officials, governments to commit to composting. But I may have misspoken. It's not the most valuable in the sense of market value, although it does have good compost in the mid-Atlantic area is worth $75 a ton, which is a decent price. But it's the largest single component of the waste stream if you combine yard debris, food discards, and soil papers like your pizza box with cheese on it. The thing that I would emphasize is the social impact. One, there is such a thing as nature deficit disorder, kids growing up thinking that Twinkies grow on trees. I'm kidding, but there's some serious educational gaps in the country. But secondly, you need topsoil to grow things. You can't have food without soil. And our topsoil in the United States is dangerously low after centuries of misuse. In the city, community farms in Detroit has several community farms that are growing food very efficiently. And in DC and other places, Baltimore, there are community gardens, which are both educational for the young people. Filbert Street Garden in southern Baltimore is located, it's a 1 acre site, garden with animals and plants and vegetables across the street from an elementary school. And the Institute worked to get them a grant to build a small compost pad right next to the garden. And now they have a little compost company, 2 or 3 workers in a truck or bicycle, picking stuff up from households and businesses, bringing it back to Filbert Street Garden, composting it, putting the topsoil back. Now, young people, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, seeing that stuff, it makes an impact on those people. And we're recruiting a lot of urban gardeners. And I'll finish by saying the Filbert Street project, many more communities in Baltimore want to do it. And that led us to a program to get rid of and crack down on illegal dumping, because you can't have a garden if there's illegal dumping on your lot. So it's all interconnected, which is what zero waste is all about.
Excellent. So 2 minutes left. I don't see any other questions. So I thought it would be kind of fun to ask each one of the speakers, what is the one takeaway you want everybody to have from this session today? I know it's hard because you guys gave us so many great things to think about, but if there was your hot button, what would that be?
I want to remind people that "Just Do It" was originally a slogan of recyclers before it was privatized. And the lesson I've learned in my 49 years of doing this stuff, the hardest decision in recycling is to decide to recycle. If you decide to do it, and there's common sense, there's basic economics, there's no mystery about it. But you have to decide to do it. So I would say political will, and to get your elected officials to have political will, you have to organize and threaten not to vote for them if they don't compost.
Ben or Natalie?
I'll kind of spin off of that. I would say just volume and economies of scale help everything about this system work better. So to Neil's point, like the more communities say yes to it and do it, it's going to get easier and easier for everyone else. And that's especially true for, a material like glass, but it's true for the whole system. So, the more you can bring other players in to consolidate your volume on a single contract, or get that regional, municipality to agree to join your zero waste vision, that is going to be the kind of like really positive snowball effect of, and it's going to make the whole system work better economically for everyone.
Excellent. Ben?
But Tracy, the philosopher Will Sager, I think, said it takes a recycling village. And, I am so happy to see the information being discussed, and, the sharing of information is very encouraging. And I really am thankful to be with such a wonderful group.
Well, it certainly does take a village. Ben, Neil, and Natalie, thank you so much. Your presentations were inspiring, gave us some nuggets to take home, and really appreciate your time. So thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, Neil and Ben.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Natalie, Neil, Tracy.